Gentlemen, welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. I've got 12:34 on my watch here, so we stopped for an extra minute just to make sure that anybody who might be arriving right at 12:30 or a little bit late got a time to get their toes in the door. Um, we are so thrilled to have everyone here today. I'm seeing several familiar names now. Here we are on our third Field Trip Friday, and we've got a good lineup today, and I can speak on behalf of the entire Health Career Pathways production team that we are again excited to share this with you and to have you on board with us. I think now is probably a good time to just mention the Health Career Pathways production team. And this has got members from Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, West Central Illinois AHEC, which AHEC stands for Area Health Education Center. Some partners from the Illinois Extension, the University of Illinois Extension, and Spoon River College. So all of the partners have in times past gotten together in various ways to produce events for high school rising graduates, folks that have just kind of crossed over and graduated and are entering into maybe a post-secondary education experience, and to promote the numerous opportunities out there in health careers. And we had done so, as you can probably anticipate me saying, in person. And so we got together this past autumn and said we need to do something while folks are not all the way back in the classroom, and produce some virtual versions of these events. So here we are, and we are just so glad to have you here. My name is Josh Christ, and I have to say I'm really excited about being here. I've have over 10 years of classroom teaching experience, doing biology and talented music for a good portion of that time. And so talking about science and learning more about science is definitely a thing that, for lack of better terms, I geek out on. So it's cool to be in this situation. Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll roll over a few things, and then we'll get to the good stuff of talking with our health professionals here. So give me just a moment while I make this maneuver. And excuse me. Here's our schedule for today. We've got 3 segments built in, whereas in the other Field Trip Fridays we've had 2 segments. We're going to go through some radiology health professions. We are going to talk about various professions in the mental wellness, mental health. I just learned a good term, helping professions. And then we'll look at some opportunities for you all within emergency medicine. So that's how that's going to run down. I gave a little brief intro about me. And so level set with Zoom etiquette. We're just hoping for positive attitudes, and it's good for you no matter whether it's this event or you're tuning in to a remote learn session with your classroom teacher, to have a distraction-free environment. Really, above all, we hope that this can trigger questions or thoughts amongst you all about what possibilities you're interested in. And so we would love it if we heard your lovely voices. It's pretty easy. Shelby's my sidekick. Actually, she's the one actually really making this thing happen. So if you raise your hand, she'll most certainly get your mic unmuted, and you can ask the panelists questions yourself. You're also welcome to use the chat box to drop some questions in there, and Shelby and I will make sure and monitor that. We could have some preliminary investigation documents that you hopefully received and took a look at. So those are to hopefully pique some ideas and some questions you may have. And if possible, we would love to see your beautiful faces. So having having video on would be optimal, but I get it if it's not. So Turn it on if you're feeling brave. How about that? So I did want to recap kind of briefly, some of the underlying philosophies that the team got together and thought about, that we were going to try to thread through the entire series of events across the spring, and that's the 3 C's: collaboration, compassion, and community. And to pull that together, synthesize that into one sentence, we're talking about working alongside others. That's the collaboration moment, in service and genuine commitment. And that'd be the compassion piece to your community's health and well-being. And there it is. So the folks that it's service to others, it's service to communities. Another theme is career ladders, and that's the idea that we hope that you all can envision yourself moving forward. While it's great if you wanted to go ahead and say, I want a professional degree, I want MD at the end of my name, and you move towards that, absolutely. But there's also other stepwise ways to get to that same either MD after your name, or find yourself in a really interesting and very different from where you started leadership position per se. So keeping in mind that the career ladder is something you can develop on your own, and know that it's going to happen stepwise in accumulation of skills and experiences, and having an attitude that you're going to continuously learn and grow. And I mean, I don't know, my students would roll their eyes and be like, use the term lifelong learners, but I'm hype about that because I find myself as a lifelong learner. And then third theme is team approaches, right? No person is an island, and person-centered healthcare calls upon the diverse skills of a lot of team members. And that can be someone that's, in intake, doing a lot of data work or something like that, or health information. Those are all vital members of a team that's going to give really high quality patient-centered care to a person. So those are our themes. And real fast, another piece that we've been touching in on throughout the spring, and will again in April, is Illinois essential employability skills. And these are oftentimes called like soft skills. And so that's a personal ethic, work ethic, teamwork, and communication. And we're on number 3, which it's bottom right now, which is the communication employability skill. And so we'll touch back on that a little bit later. So really, I'm going to try to sum this up. We're going to explore the experience that our health professionals who have joined us here today, and the pathways that they represent. Look at the panel to broaden our understanding of pathways, and then reflect on the skills that you might need to move into the thing that will work for you. Please ask questions. Please actively participate. That was me summing up that whole slide. Here's a tech check. We're going to do some annotation just for fun, and then we're going to use Menti twice. Hopefully we'll get to the Mentis. We may or may not. I tend to talk a lot, and I hope that reduces as we move forward. So there's annotate. Let's practice real fast just for fun. Icebreaker. Please, I know if you're coming from your phones, annotation may not be the most easy thing, but if you can, join in on this next one right here, which is to say, if it were safe to vacation anywhere in the world right now, where would you go? So if you want to drop something down on that using your annotation, where would you go? Anywhere in the world. Australia, New Zealand's got some great situations going on here. Let's see if anything shows up. All right, I see some UK. Yeah, it's warming up there. Australia, I see some hearts. I wonder if we'll get any others. I recognize Melissa.
We're getting into the chat box. London and Mexico or some vacation destinations.
Nice. Okay. I don't see those, but I'm glad you do. All right, Hannah. Hannah dropped it on like Armenia or something. Czech Republic. Nice.
Ooh, a Greece came in.
Fiji, we got a Greece. Nice. All right. Yeah, and I would go far, far away just because, like, out of principle. All right. Yeah. So, we're getting there, y'all. Let's all hang on tight. It's a rough ride. All right, Carlos, you going Norway or Iceland? One of those two. Nice, Carlos. Cool. Yeah, Iceland. Getting some thermal springs up there. Excellent. All right, thanks everybody who dropped some icons on the map there. Oh, and they're still there. Let me clear that out. Let me clear the annotations. There we go. I hope.
I'll
Shelby,
take care of
you're a
that.
genius. Thank you very much. All right, so here we go into radiology, ladies and gents. So when we were registering this event when registering for this event, you were posed the question about which superpower you would prefer. Remember that? So most of you all chose the right answer. You know, the which would be those are boring. My superpower will be being a healthcare professional. But some of you smartly selected more than one. However, if you chose an invisible, when I ask you this: what type of image would result if a radiology person took a scan of your invisible body? Would anything show up? So, from the pioneer science of Marie Curie and others, we have learned how to harness the power of materials that can predictably move through other materials. So, in the case of today's session, we're talking about radioactive materials that can predictably pass through human tissues. That's pretty cool. So, there's a wide variety of professions in the medical field of radiology, and they require education ranging from 1 year of training to 10 years of education. Um, all of the radiology professionals share an in-depth knowledge of anatomy and physics and patient care. And by using unique skills and knowledge of non-invasive radiological technology, professionals in radiology help enhance diagnostics and treatment. So we are joined today um, by two veteran practitioners in radiology. And I say two, and I am hoping, as we got started, I was unsure if we had both on board. And so, I guess before taking any step further, Shelby, is Mr. Griffin with us?
He is not. I do not see him yet.
Okay. Well, hey, being a music educator, improvisation is one of my number one favorite things to do. So, we are joined today by one illustrious veteran practitioner in radiology, and who also holds a position in administrative leadership. And so, today with us is Miss Dawn Oren. Uh, Miss Owen started along her pathway as a radiology technologist and served in a wide array of healthcare settings. She's then moved into directorship role and now serves Carthage Memorial Hospital in Hancock County as chief ancillary officer. Um, and so we are thrilled to have Miss Owen with us today. And so welcome. Glad to have you. We're so thankful that you've chosen to share your Friday afternoon with us, and we're excited to learn more about the radiologic professions, navigating career pathways, and your specific experiences. So we can't thank you enough, Miss Owen. Welcome in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, and right on. So, I we, as everyone can detect, we did expect or hope that there was going to be another person that joined us. So it's going to be you and I, Miss Oren, if that's all right.
Works
Um,
for me.
Great. Um, so I think what I would like to do is I would like to just start, if you don't mind, to give an overview. I believe that most in the audience are like me, and we could benefit to hear a bit more about the numerous directions people can take in radiology. So I think if you don't mind, would you mind explaining the differences between radiology technologists, nuclear medicine technologists, and radiologists?
Sure. So, a radiology technologist is the person who actually takes the x-rays. Radiology technologists do general x-ray. They can get some additional training and do CTs or CAT scans, MRI. Uh, Many rad techs start out as techs, but then go and get their ultrasound or their nuke medicine. Both for ultrasound and nuclear medicine, you do not have to be a X-ray tech or a radiology tech first. You can go directly into those two specialties. With CT, with radiology, we get pictures by using radiation. A nuclear medicine technologist actually doesn't use a machine that emits the radiation, but they actually inject radionuclides into the patient's body, and then they use a camera to capture basically the radiation that's coming out of their body. A radiologist, on the other side, is a physician, is a full MD, and they are the ones that are actually interpreting the scans that any of the technologists do.
Awesome. So to kind of recap, um, radiology technologist is going to be doing some of the active use of radiation with the machinery from the externally, whereas nuclear medicine technologists are going to be more dedicated to taking images of radiation as it has been administered into the body.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I'm going to share screen again because there is, I pulled up a little graphic and I'd like to just walk through that with you, Miss Oren, if that's okay, which is the different imaging tests from, and you mentioned, well, 4 of the 5 of these. And so these are the common ones. And you've performed many of these, is that correct?
Yes. Well, yes, some of them. X-ray, CT, mammography, a little bit of MRI.
Okay. Great. So this is something that I found online, and it to me is a really concise kind of rundown of the various imaging scans and what's involved with them, and why they're ordered, so why they're used. So, Ms. Oren, in terms of like staff positions, between imaging and therapy, which is more common? I guess, in other words, what carries a broad set of options for the audience who might be thinking about prospective pathways here in radiology?
Well, becoming a registered radiology technologist is going to give you many openings. Even in school, you have rotations through the CT scanner, through the MRI, sometimes depending on the program, through nuclear medicine and ultrasound, short rotations through them. So once you become a technologist, you can get the extra training a lot of times on the job to be able to perform CTs or MRI. A lot of schools for ultrasound or nuclear medicine are going to look for that RT first because you've got the basic knowledge and understanding of anatomy and how radiation works. So that's a big plus. I personally went through my path that I decided to go into supervision and management, and you basically want to have a rad tech as your boss because she or he understands what your job is and what you're doing.
Yeah, so a supervisor that's been there will have a more kind of like better informed understanding of what they're asking their team to do. Okay, and so that's, I mean, and that you bring up a really important point that I did want to get to. So which is as I said in the outset, career ladders is something that we've woven through, or we are weaving through all of the events, and that's also to kind of consider that sometimes, without you necessarily planning on it, opportunities may arise where you leave the work that you got into in the first place to do something different, like get into administration. Um, and so I guess I would like to hear your thoughts, if you would talk a little bit about um, if you had administration in mind when you began working as a radiology technologist, and how you began to see this option as a good fit for yourself.
No, I had no idea I would end up in administration. I mean, I went to school right out of high school. I
Mm.
started. So my goal was not have to work at McDonald's at the point. I mean, I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But no, my whole goal was to be a rad tech. I am old enough that CT wasn't too old and MRI was brand new. So the thought of even going on to one of those modalities didn't really come into my head at that time. But I got in, I started as a general rad tech in a hospital. And like you said, opportunities come up. I had a family physician come to me and say, "Hey, we're putting an X-ray machine in our facility, and we've got like 10 family practice doctors. Would you like to come there?" So I have worked in doctors' offices. I've worked in small hospitals. I have worked in level 1 trauma centers. So that if you like the fast pace, you never know what's going to come through the doors, something different every day, that's where you need to go, because it's completely fast action all the time there. When I have worked for orthopedic doctors in their offices, that was my first supervisory job. They came to me and asked me if I wanted to be a lead technologist. And so I accepted, and I realized that I really enjoyed having that supervisory role. I enjoyed being the go-between between management and the physicians and the technologist. I felt like I could be a good advocate for the technologist when administration comes to me and says, "You need to do this, this, and this." And I could be that voice and say, "Okay, we can do this, but this is going to affect your workflow or your technologist this way." So that's kind of when I got the bug to go more into management. From there, I went to manager, to director, and then recently I have obtained the position of chief ancillary services officer. So I'm not only over radiology, but also lab, pharmacy, and housekeeping.
Great. And
Great.
yeah, that's a lot of subsystems of a larger hospital system. Yeah, that's and so in short, you're saying you didn't have it in mind at all, but it struck you, and yeah, and that's the thing that I think that the production team, we're hoping to just make sure that we're messaging to the the aspiring health professionals who have joined us today, that to keep your eyes and your mind open to unforeseen opportunities, unthought of routes that might just show themselves, and might wind up being like a really gratifying but different thing than what you got into initially, and that by continuously kind of keeping yourself available to that and building your skills all the while, then those opportunities will present themselves. So that's really good to hear your story. And I also wanted to just ask. I feel like, and I might be, I might be off on this, but it seems like, well, really all jobs in the health professions, or nearly all, require some degree of technical expertise. It does seem like radiologic professions they straddle the middle ground of requiring a high degree of technical skill, but also having a high degree of interpersonal skills to get the patient to do exactly what you need them to do, like hold a certain position or stay perfectly still, or if a patient's in and they're in a really high degree of pain, but you've got to get a particular shot, a particular image. So I feel, to me, it just seems that in those situations, you've got to have a radiology person has to have a high degree of the technical skill, and also a really high degree of gentle touch or interpersonal compassion. And would you speak to that? The balance between those, that?
I mean, you're completely right. It takes technical skill. You know, we don't ever want to over radiate anybody. We don't ever want to, you know, our patient's health is first and foremost. But we are dealing with people who are in pain, who are scared, and you know, to try to get that image that the radiologist can read and do it correctly, make sure we're not missing anything, can sometimes be really hard on the patient to be able to lay that still or lay in that position. So you also have to get a little bit creative. It is a lot. I have a lot of students come in and say, oh, I like to take pictures. I like photography. And yes, we're taking pictures, but you've got to be really creative with it, because sometimes you need to turn that X-ray tube in a different direction or angle it in a different way to make sure that you're getting a good image for interpretation, so that person gets a good diagnosis, correct diagnosis.
Yeah. To unmute, and Shelby will hook you up, or you're welcome to use the chat box. Do keep in mind that that Ms. Owen's joining us. She's got a whole ton of expertise, so she's given her time, and we should take advantage of that.
And I have adjusted our settings so all participants at this time are already allowed to unmute themselves.
Unmute, okay. Let's see if we got some brave souls out there who are gonna ask any questions. Okay. All right. Well, I tell you what, if there are any questions that come up for any of those of you in attendance, you're more than welcome to email them to me. I've reached out to all of you in the past a couple times recently, and so you're welcome to email me, and I would certainly make sure and be a conduit between you and Ms. Owen to get that question answered. So by all means, you can give me a shout. All righty. Well, I can't thank you enough, Ms. Owen, for joining us today. You're the outstanding lone radiology person that joined us today, and we can't thank you enough for giving your time and your expertise and sharing your experience. So thanks so much.
Hey, thank you.
Have fun in Colorado.
I will. I'm out.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody out there, we're going to take just, I would say 3 minutes. We're going to step away for 3 minutes. Everybody hop up, do some jumping jacks, maybe go to the kitchen and get some water, or just stand up and shake it out. So 3 minutes, and we'll come back and get moving at 1:10. And keep in mind, even during this time, if you have any questions or you have anything you'd like to share, chat box is available, and I'll be here because my water's right here. All right, y'all. See you in a couple minutes. So that it's 1:10, and so let's get jamming here, folks. I say welcome back. Don't know if you all stretched or went anywhere, or if you're holding your cell phone and so you can be anywhere and everywhere with this. So segment number 2, folks, is mental wellness. So just to reset, If you can have a distraction-free environment, that'd be great. Our panelists are donating their Friday afternoon time to join us, and I think I can speak for them confidently and say that I think nothing would bring them happiness more than if you unmuted and asked questions and engaged with them and the hard work they've been doing. And so, by all means, please let's ask them questions and learn as much as we can from them. All right. So, you know, there seems to be no one who hasn't been deeply impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. And we're right about the 1 year mark of, and I don't know about y'all, but it seems to be driving most people bananas. As a matter of fact, I bet most of us here, and I won't exclude myself, are right about exhausted with Zoom gatherings. Extra kudos to you all for making the commitment to join us today. And some probably even cringe when hearing the word pandemic. So it's not uncommon these days, or conversations around the mental and emotional and social aspects of our well-being, among many other ways in which we are trying to understand how this unique moment is affecting our lives, the fabric of our communities, and society at large. So I can only imagine you've noticed differences in these aspects of your lives, or at very least been involved in these types of conversations. So we're excited to host a segment today that looks at health professions dedicated to mental wellness. More commonly, the term would be mental health. And I think that it's important that we understand how strong of an impact our words can have. And so we're framing it positively to say mental wellness. So as we will explore in greater depth with our professional panelists, mental health has occupied a place among healthcare that is, well, a little off to the side, or even better, it's in a place that is kept out of sight. So now that has something to do with just generally how much about the workings of the brain, the organ, and the mind, the stuff that it does, remains some of the lesser known parts of the human organism. But it also has to do with the fact that there is a social cost to being not well, no matter the condition. So when it's our brain and our mind, some of the most personal, complex, and mysterious aspects of us are thrown off balance for whatever reason. There's a tremendous social pressure surrounding what we do about it. And the fact is, whether you're feeling bored with yet another Zoom meeting, or you want to scream when your dad nags at you about putting away the dishes, whether you are super excited that today's a Friday and the weekend is almost here, or sad because this weekend will be yet another weekend where you can't visit with a grandparent or a family member or a friend. But there isn't a moment of your life that elapses where you and I don't have some sort of mental health status: good, bad, confused, glad. It's a continuous and indefinite dimension to who we are. So I encourage all of us to recognize it, explore it, and own it, and know it. So enough of the soapbox. We are thrilled and grateful to have three tremendous mental health professionals joining us today. From Western Illinois University, we welcome Sonia Schmidt. She's a licensed clinical social worker who practices as a counselor in Western Illinois University's Counseling Center and as an addictions specialist in WIU's Alcohol and Other Drug Resource Center. Ms. Schmidt obtained her bachelor's in psychology at Purdue and a master's in clinical social work at Michigan State University. And Ms. Schmidt has worked in residential treatment facilities for adolescents. She's done case management for teens at risk of out-of-home placement due to mental health and substance use issues, and provided outpatient therapy in a community mental health center before joining WIU's community. We also have with us today, excuse me. I went crazy just now. We also have with us today Dr. Nick Wasinski. He's a licensed professional educator in the state of Illinois and holds a national board certification in counseling. He's been a high school teacher, a psychotherapist, and a university faculty member and administrator. Currently, Dr. Nick serves as a faculty member in the SIU School of Medicine Department of Medical Education. So welcome, Dr. Nick. We're also thrilled to welcome Dr. Terry Guilford. Dr. Guilford holds a doctor in clinical forensic psychology, and currently works as a licensed clinical forensic psychologist and licensed sex offender treatment provider, as well as having a private practice. So welcome to you all. Glad to have you all here. So I would like to start off with an overview, and considering that this is the first time many of the folks here are getting to see some of the potential pathways in mental health professions, I would like to go through an overview of a few of the various helping professions. So Dr. Nick, would you mind briefly explaining some of the differences between the helping professions, as you've taught me to call them, and kind of run that down, please?
Yeah, totally. First of all, thanks so much, everyone. It's a thrill to be here today and chat with you. So this is a slide that just lists a few of the helping professions. There are more. And, it can be kind of confusing to distinguish between helping professions because we all do a lot of the same kinds of things. For example, all of the helping professions listed here can do therapy. But the way we think about therapy or the scope of the services that we're able to provide might differ because of our training. So I'm going to go through these quickly-ish, and then if you have comments or questions, absolutely feel free to ask. So at the far left, we have psychiatrists. These are medical doctors, which means they have to go through a buttload of school. They've got to go through 4 years of college, plus 4 years of medical school, plus then some specialized training after that. And they can do therapy. In my experience, most of the psychiatrists I work do less therapy, and most of what they do is just prescribe medicine. So like antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication or antipsychotic medication. Clinical psychologists and counseling psychologists have a lot of overlap, but they do differ in the way they think about people and problems. They also typically do a lot of research. So they're trained in doing therapy, but also trained in research skills. And they go through 4 years of college and then usually another 4 or 5 years of graduate school after that. And then the last two here, counselor educators and social workers, they can also do therapy. There's some philosophical differences between the two, but I think the big takeaway here is that they go through less schooling. So they do less schooling to do therapy. They usually go through 4 years of college and then another 2 years or so after that. Sometimes it can be 3, sometimes it can be 1. It depends on the program.
Awesome. Well, you were able to distill that down very quickly and efficiently. So I appreciate it.
That's how I roll, Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely, Dr. Nick. So I guess one thing that stood out to me when looking at this, when you sent it over to me, is to get an understanding of and this could be tricky, but like to distinguish between in the third row down, it's got medical model and wellness model. And can you distinguish between those two?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is painting in really broad brushstrokes, but I think this hits at the heart of the difference. So the medical model typically focuses and centers problems and mental illness first. And sometimes all of the other things that make a person get lost. The wellness model typically focuses on people and their strengths first. This model tries to take into account all of the things that make a person, not just their mental illness. And so that approach influences how these professions then look at therapy and the therapy they do. So a psychiatrist, for example, trained in the medical model, if they have a person that comes to them with psychotic symptoms, which means they're seeing things that aren't there, or hearing things that aren't there, or they have paranoid thoughts about something, they're going to see that person probably in terms of the problem is the thing that we have to address, and the goal is to eliminate parts of the problem. Someone who's approaching this from a wellness model will see the problem, but they'll also think, well, what strengths does this person have? What are the things in their environment that we can enhance? What are the skills they have they can build on? Do they have a religious community that we can plug them in to get support? There are a lot of layers that then go into that. It's a much more strengths holistic kind of approach. And again, that's a broad brushstroke. So I'd be curious how my colleagues on the panel here think about that too.
I'm glad that you ended with that, and because I did want to open to either Ms. Schmidt or Dr. Guilford to comment there.
Hi, I'm Dr. Guilford.
Hey, Dr.
Agree.
Guilford.
I do agree with you, Nick. Yes. For me, though, I think it's best that I see somebody as a whole. Yes, if you come in with, psychotic, you're hearing and seeing things, before I can get to anything else, I have to figure out what can I do to help you decrease or eliminate, when I use that word loosely, that before I can get, to your strengths. Because a strength would be something as simple as I had a client who was severely psychotic, but he knew his medication regimen, and he knew when he got down to one pill, he needed to go to the building with the big blue awning, which was Rite Aid, to go get that. So that was a strength, and we built on that, because that was I was like, that is very important. You are right. When you get down to one pill, you should go to the building
with the big blue awning. Yeah.
With the big blue awning, to make sure you re-up. So for me, I think I appreciate the medical model and the wellness model, but I know I like to integrate them, because you're not just your disorder or your deficit or anything of that nature.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Guilford. That certainly as practical as the big blue awning is essential, and then in that is to go refill the medicine. So you're speaking to both of those elements in the same example. So thank you for adding that. So I did want to talk about a couple things. The majority of the folks gathered here together right now are people in their adolescence, emerging adults, and I definitely wanted to talk about it with you all, about what your experiences are having worked with people in that age range, and I also wanted to talk about how when you all are doing work with folks in their mental health conditions, exactly how you go about kind of taking care of yourself and being truly available and things of that sort. So I'd like to start with the first one, and I would like to ask Ms. Schmidt, if you've had tons of experience in the counseling realm and in school settings, and you've also had a bunch of experiences working with folks in early adulthood or adolescence. And I'm wondering if you would could you speak to the kind of like the purpose and the meaning you might get from working with people in their adolescence?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I did a lot of my work early on with teens. I originally had thought I might want to work with children, but just as circumstance had it, I started out with teens, and I found it to actually be very meaningful, because I felt like I was coming in at a point in someone's life where they're struggling with a lot of transitions. There's the whole kind of like developmental stages. There's the separating, from their parents, and your friends are becoming more important to you. There's like physical changes. There's just kind of a lot to cope and deal with during that time of adolescence and transition. And so for the kids that I worked with, in addition to that, they would have, sometimes lots of issues going on in their homes. They might have been victims of some sort of abuse. A lot of them had mental health diagnoses, substance use issues. And so in my first job after grad school, with adolescents, they were in a residential facility. And so then there were even more issues there because, the goal was hopefully to allow them to return home, yet some of them that was not the best fit for them. And so there was a lot of, advocacy, a lot of like almost becoming like an ally with my adolescent clients, but then also trying to navigate, with their families and the systems at large. And so for me, I think, and maybe it ties into my social work background, but I did feel like I had this sense of purpose to kind of like fight for them and kind of work on their behalf, and not only in like their counseling and therapy, but also outside of that with like all the systems. So that was in that setting. And then my next job was in case management, and that was with children, adolescents, and then their families. The goal was to keep them at home. And so that was actually even harder because the parents did not always want to like look at their role in, what was happening in that home. And so even more so, I felt like I had to advocate for these kids. Because I mean, if you think about all the things that you deal with when you don't have trouble at home and you don't have mental health issues and you don't have all those things going on and you're a teenager, I mean, it's just such a hard time, I feel like, for these kids. So for me, it was very rewarding. I found a lot of meaning in kind of being that person. I don't know, I guess it kind of fit with my values, my career goals, and kind of what I wanted to do, because I always kind of wanted to get out there and help kids and make a difference, and I don't know, help somebody with something, I guess, in their lives. And I got that in those roles. I remember, I'll just share this real quick and then I'll stop talking. But I remember I had a family where the younger sibling was always so excited to see me when I would come to their home for my sessions. And he would run up to me, and he wasn't necessarily even like my client per se, but I don't know, you guys might be too young for this, a lot of you, but Billy Ray Cyrus had this song, Achy Breaky Heart. And this little kid knew all the words, and he'd always come up to me and he'd say, I probably will never forget that. And I think it's kind of symbolic too, the song that he like the name of the song that he would sing. But anyway, I guess for me, the meaning came from feeling like I was making a difference in the lives of these teenagers at one of those hard stages of life anyway. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate that that we're discussing this, and to the audience, I intentionally brought this up because I think that we as some adults and professionals, we try to get it, and it's definitely a unique time in life to be, emerging as your own, as an adult, and the prospects of where to go or how to kind of like point yourself in the world can be a loud decision. And I think we get that. And part of this event here today is to just maybe turn you on to some possible ways that you can serve your communities if you get into health professions, and it's really gratifying that way. And I think that's what Ms. Schmidt was just sharing as part of the gratification that she feels serving folks of your age now. Dr. Guilford, you work in a setting where the people that you interact with and that you serve oftentimes have pretty severe mental health conditions, and many of them also have caused some pretty serious harm to others. And so it seems like it's a pretty challenging workspace, I imagine. And so I guess, for those of us in the audience that are interested in doing clinical psychology and even more specifically forensic psychology, I wanted to hear from you what it means to maintain like compassion and your authentic self but in a situation where having boundaries and taking care of yourself, self-care, what it looks like with these challenging cases.
So in my before I decided to be in forensics or whatever, I, in my younger years, worked at a residential treatment home, and I learned boundaries from there and working with, children, because they want to know about you and they know everything about you, and they have poor boundaries. And in your mind, you're just like, I'm just having this conversation. And I'll never forget. So my good who is my sorority sister now? Shout out to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She worked, and she's just like, when you go in there, if you give them anything, they'll run with it. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't understand. So I think I said, they were like, what's your favorite color? I was like, all my colors are favorite. And then one day they got me and they asked me what my sign was, and I said a Taurus. And from that moment on, anything that I did, they built on me being a Taurus or my stubbornness or whatever. And so I learned boundaries from working in a residential, program. And so that really helped me as I went along and decided to say, hey, I want to work in forensics. I want to work with an incarcerated, population, or with the courts or DCFS or things of that nature. And so, the guys that I work with now that I specialize in, they do have a lot of mental health issues, but they also have, hurt others. And so just like children are trying to seek a connection, they are also trying to seek a connection. And how am I able to be the vessel for that, but, in a very appropriate, giving them those appropriate boundaries? Because children and adolescents who do not resolve their issues as children and adolescents grow up to be adults with issues that they have not resolved, and it just kind of gets, worse. With all the freedoms and things that come with being an adult. And so for me, the compassion that I show just for them, being in what they've been through, because all the guys that I work with, they've all been to prison. And so like I tell them all the time, everybody can't survive prison in so many levels. And so I try to pick up on that strength that, you're a survivor, in this way. And can we work on what you do well? There are things you do. There's a staffing that I do with them every 6 months, and they can tell me everything. And so I said, can you give me 3 strengths? And now we're just in silence now, because I was like, you have strengths. I know what they are. But do you know what they are? And they always get stumped, and they always need like a day. And I'm just like, you should know your strengths. And so just really understand, because some of the, never excusing the things that they've done, but some of them come from pretty, horrific backgrounds. And the fact that they even survived that to be sitting here with me today, I kind of say, you've been through that and you made it. And just really, really trying to be authentic in who I am and what I am, especially if you decide to work in any type of forensic population or just any clinical population, anything working with authentic. Being authentic is the key, because they have been BS'd probably their entire life, and they had BS probably their entire life. So when you give them that authentic piece of you, they don't know how to handle it, because they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I come in there and I say, I'm gonna give it to you straight, no chaser. And they're like, oh yeah, we know Dr. Gilbert. So I'm like, so you're waiting for this other shoe to drop, and you're not gonna get that, with me. And so I think that's, very, very important to, pull from their strengths, pull from their, compassion, but understand where they're at, what their mental illness is, and, build from there, and try to just help people, not just people who've committed sexual offenses. Let them know, they're not their bad times, they're not their crimes that they're committed. These were moments in time. Your life is bigger than these moments where you made some not so good decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an alliance is important. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Guilford. And I also I think that self-care is, I don't know if it's like a word of the day, if it's a pandemic word of the day, but we need to love ourselves, and we also need to figure out ways to take care of ourselves. And so I guess I'd like to just hear a little bit more about about self-care and you know, this topic's relevant no matter if we've got,
No,
you know, diagnosed mental
no matter what.
situations or not. And so I want to hear your thoughts on self-care in general. And how about Dr. Nick? Would you mind describing either like how to approach it or some tips?
So for me, Dr. Nick, and I know you, and Miss Sonia, I know you'll appreciate when I say, what exactly is self-care? I know you understand when I say, what is self-care? Because I think as clinicians, we have poor self-care because we are trying to help so many other people. And so, and so self-care for me is a lot of Netflix and just watching shows with no, paperwork. But self-care is, in a way, being authentic with yourself to say to yourself, I need a break. And I think sometimes as clinicians and even as students, I got to study for this test. I got to write this paper. I got to join this club. My friends want to meet me. My boyfriend wants to meet me. My girlfriend wants to meet me. And everybody's pulling me in all these directions. And I'm trying to meet all these, some of them are unrealistic expectations. And then some of them are all these expectations that the teacher has for me, my friends, my parents. And you're just getting pulled in all these different directions. And then you're not understanding you're burning yourself at both ends of the candle. And so being able to say to self and not feel bad about it, that I need a break. And whatever that looks like for you, I don't know if that's running, jogging, just laying, doing yoga, exercising, being able to say to yourself that I need to take a break and I need to step away and not feeling bad about it. Because I think sometimes we do, even I feel bad about, dang, I just really need a break right now. I really need an hour just to get all my stuff together, because eventually, you're kind of gonna crash. And I think what the pandemic, to me, I felt like it has completely sat the world down and made them kind of, focus, which is kind of, hard. But self-care is being able to say, I need a break, and stepping away and not feeling guilty about it.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, I'm really crappy at self-care, kind of like what Dr. Guilford just said. So I feel like I have the least to contribute about this in any meaningful way because I don't practice what I preach, honestly. A couple of things come to mind though. First is that rest. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Rest comes in two forms. One is like physical rest. So making sure your body is sleeping, you're eating, you're taken care of, you're putting your feet up. But then there's also rest in your mind, like having a settled mind, a quiet mind, peace of mind, like you're not worrying or stressing or anxious about whatever's going on. And it's really easy for me to rest my body, like really easy. I can lay on the couch all day long, but my mind is always just like, racing. So I think being able to know what you're good at and what you're not good at as far as rest goes, and then targeting interventions to those things. What is it that could slow your mind down? What is it that could slow your body down? Kind of tying into the previous question, I think one of the ways that you care for yourself is by establishing good boundaries. As a clinician, you need to be able to separate yourself from your clients, from your workplace, even from the stories that you hear. Like as a therapist, you are like a human garbage collector. People come into your office, they leave their trash there, and then they walk away, and then you're left with all of it. And that sounds really negative, but it's an honor. Like it's a sacred thing to be a witness to people's deepest pain. But that can be traumatizing. It can traumatize you to hear those things over and over and over again. So setting boundaries, being able to get away from that and leave those things there, really important. And another thing, this is the last thing that I think I've learned in my career, is figuring out where I get my energy from. And typically people either get their energy from other people or they get their energy by being alone. I found out really quickly that when I was doing therapy, that sapped my energy. At the end of a day, after you see 9 clients back to back to back, you're exhausted. And when you get home, you don't want to talk to your best friend who calls you. or when your mom wants to talk about whatever moms talk about, you don't want to talk about that stuff. There are other people, however, that they get all of their energy by being in contact and communication with other people. And so knowing that about yourself, I think, is the beginning of wisdom in this career, and then figuring out how to leverage that in a way that helps you do what's best for you and for your clients.
Yeah, that's a great point. The kind of general, to put it in course terms, the introvert extrovert type of thing, where you're either gathering energy as an interpersonal person, or you gather energy when there's a release from that interpersonal space. Awesome. Thanks for y'all's thoughts and contributions there. I guess I would like to, for practical purposes for our audience, I'd like to just to get some words of advice of anybody that's joined us here today that might be considering taking a step towards work in the mental wellness fields, in the helping fields. Ms. Schmidt, do you have any advice that you would feel is a good piece of advice for anybody that's looking towards this direction?
Well, I mean, it kind of fits right in with what we've been talking about. I think it's real important to kind of know yourself, and because I think for some people, they have a hard time leaving things like I'm pretty good at leaving my work at work, but until I got good at that, it was really hard. And so kind of knowing yourself, and then being clear about what your goals and intentions are, I think too. Because sometimes I think, I don't know about all the other professions, but I think sometimes people aren't real sure, like for example, what social work is. And so they're like, oh, well, that sounds like something I might like to do. And, you get into it, and it's, I mean, I think we might be talking about this in a little bit, but you get into it and it might not be exactly what you're thinking. And you might see that, it's taking you on a path you weren't really necessarily planning on. And if you're willing and open to that, it can be an awesome thing. But if it doesn't fit with you and your personality, or kind of what your goals are, or what you want, then, I think you need to take a step back and look. So I guess bottom line, sort of look for something that feeds your soul, I guess, or that fits with your values. And, start there.
Excellent. You got big thumbs up and hand waves from your two co-panelists there. We can roundtable this if you all want to kind of dovetail on what Ms. Schmidt said, either two of you, or we'll let that. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Yofa.
Real quick advice that I would give. I don't know for my panelists. I know in my program, you had to personally go and get 30 hours of therapy. And it was one of the experiences I did not want to do. I was like, this is weird. I do not feel like sitting across with somebody. Therapy, those were the best 30 hours of my life. I guarantee that if you want to do this work, I was recommended on day one of school, you need to go to get a therapist, because as he says, it is an honor for somebody to come and dump on you. And I think that therapy, is great. And I can definitely say for me, being an African-American woman in the African-American community, sometimes we don't really think about mental health. Like, it's kind of okay to have like a broken arm and a broken wrist, but it's really not okay to have like a broken heart. It's really not okay to be sad. Like, you just especially for men in general, you get two paths. You get happy and you get angry. You cannot be anything in between unless you hear or see that, as, weakness. And so I think for me, when people are like, oh, you want to be a quack? And I'm like, that's definitely not what I want to be. Like that's not the terminology I would use. But sometimes even within my culture, it's kind of hard to explain, like, this is outside of the prison system, I do other therapy stuff. And so I think it is very good for people, to go and, and I know people are like, well, I can, I pray about it. I talk about my friends. There's nothing like sitting in front of somebody who has no dog in the fight, meaning like they have nothing to gain except to hear you and you be your most vulnerable self. I can probably speak for both my panelists when I say there are people who have come to me and told me things they won't even tell their priest. They've never even admitted to anybody. And that is like, you know, a huge honor. So I encourage going to speak with somebody. There's nothing, you know, wrong in that. Because if your leg was broken, your arm was broke, or whatever was broke, you would go and see somebody. If your mind needs help or broken or a piece of it or whatever, go and see somebody. I truly, truly encourage it. It is a really, really great experience.
Awesome.
I totally agree with that.
Thanks.
I went to therapy when I was in my graduate program, and it not only was really beneficial for me just as a human being, for my soul, but it was really beneficial for me to see a clinician who had much more experience use techniques with me. And I thought, oh, so this is how this technique works in practice. Like it was both therapeutic and practical from a training perspective. And then for anybody else considering, you know, going into the helping professions, I think kind of wise ancient advice is to count the costs before you go into doing something. And so think about what kind of schooling commitment do you want to make, because there is a schooling commitment to this. Thinking about what kind of work environment you might enjoy, because counselors can work in lots of different work environments, and maybe private practice is what sounds good to you, where you're in a posh office with sleek, you know, modern furniture, or you'd rather be in a prison system. Like there's lots of variability there. And then think about the personality traits that you have, and if they're congruent with what might make an effective helping professional. So patience is a really, really big skill that you need to have, a willingness to self-reflect and to investigate your own, like, I'm having a strong reaction to this person right now. Why am I having that reaction? And doing the work yourself to make sure that you can work with them. Comfort with ambiguity, which that's a kind of a big phrase, but it basically means you're comfortable not knowing an answer. Like maybe there isn't an answer. Maybe things are just kind of chaotic and weird sometimes, or confusing, and being comfortable with the uncomfortable kinds of things. Teachability, being able to have, being able to seek out supervision. So a more senior clinician or somebody who knows something a little bit more than you do, and being willing to bounce things off of them and open yourself up to them as you help other people. All of those traits really, really help if you're going into this line of work.
Awesome. So audience members, catch those little nuggets of wisdom there, and know that that there's a great space for a lot of impact in the work as well. Lots of impact. Okay, we're getting close to the end of this segment. I wanted to do two things. I wanted to prioritize opening up the floor for any kind of questions, and then I wanted to finish off with a graphic and hearing y'all's comments. But if there's plenty of questions, then we might not get to the graphic, and certainly we would love to be able to field your questions. So right now, I'd like to open it up to anybody out there that might have want to unmute or use the text box, the chat box, to ask questions of our professionals.
And you are now able to unmute yourself if that's how you'd like to ask your question, or go ahead and instant message a question to Josh or myself.
Thanks, Shelby. All right. I'm going to hang out for a second. Don't want the silence to be awkward, but definitely want to give y'all enough time to get your wits about you and ask any questions you might have. All right. So, as I said in segment number 1, if something comes to mind and you would like to actually ask something of the 3 helping professionals on the panel, by all means, you can email me. I've been in touch with you all via email, so you can email me the questions, and I would be more than happy to act as a go-between and pass along that question to our professionals that have joined us, so generously joined us here today. And so it is at this moment then that I would like to I'd like to put up a graphic and kind of talk through it with our audience member. So give me just a second. Excuse me. And here it is. So it's kind of circulating around right now on the internet a bunch, at least in my little tiny slice of the web, and it's pretty popular. But I guess I'd just like for anyone anyone on our panel or anybody in the audience who might have a question based on this these are the 4 principal chemicals that are associated with kind of our well-being. And I think it's a pretty cool guide that I'm actually, quite frankly, using personally in my life to just make sure that I'm checking in with some of these ways to strike. I think this is my mode of self-care, as it were. And so I don't know. I can put this into this file into the chat box if anybody wants to take it. It's searchable on the internet. Like I said, it's everywhere. But panelists, does anybody want to riff on this? I mean, don't feel obliged, but I appreciate it. It's my little cheat sheet.
Well, first, Dr. Nick, I know you can relate. Mr. Josh, you were giving me flashbacks from the EPPP, which is a huge test you have to take when you become a psychologist, if you choose to want to do practice and treat people and do assessments. And so it's like this really big test. And so for me, dopamine and eating food, that is my thing. That is my jam. I am like a really, really big, foodie, and the serotonin and just me cycling. That's something that I really love, to do. So okay. I do like this chart. I think it's like a nice and quick and dirty thing for people to see and where they can, pull from or where certain things pull from. And so I think it's awesome.
It's my little cheat sheet. Hey, and we have a question that came through from a person that's joined us here in the audience, and Nuri says, do all healthcare related opportunities require a degree? And I think that all 3 panelists that have joined us here do have degrees, but there are certainly there are professions within healthcare that don't require a degree. There are certifications that you can attain, which can get you into work actually rather quickly. And so, as a matter of fact, one of our partnering organizations, Spoon River College, I believe they've got a couple of offerings. And so what we'll do is we'll post a couple of links into the chat box here in just a moment that you can follow just to do some exploring. There's the Spoon River College link. And if you go in there, you'll see that there are some pathways that you can get into, which don't require a 2-year, 4-year, or beyond degree, and you can get to work. And I'll also say that you can get to work in the short term, and while you're working in the short term, if you're interested in continuing down a pathway of kind of building skills and more education, a lot of the times your work placements might have some sort of either tuition reimbursement or training program built in where you can continue to build your skills as you are currently working and drawing in income, gaining income. So follow those 2 links, and that's a great question. Okay, so it is right about time we have to part ways with this.
Josh, if you don't mind, we have one more question related to
Yeah,
our mental health careers. And
yeah.
that was, do most mental health careers have a major in psychology?
Could you repeat that question?
Yes. Do most mental health careers require a major in psychology?
I would say no. I think it's helpful, but it's not a requirement. My bachelor's degree is not in psychology. I had a minor in psychology. Um, what really, I think what really helps is if you want to be a therapist, for example, you really do your specialization after your bachelor's degree in your graduate programs. And so if you have a bachelor's degree in education or social work or psychology or English, all of those things have a certain values and skills they teach you, which can be used to benefit your clients and your career if you want to do something in the helping professions. It's really just about how you take those skills that you develop and then pivot them towards whatever it is that you might want to do in the helping professions.
I agree with that. My undergraduate, I'm born and raised in New York, and so I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and my bachelor's is in criminology. I always knew I wanted to work with. Initially, I wanted to be a lawyer, but I always knew I wanted to work with criminals, and so therefore, my bachelor's degree, and I minored in forensic psychology. Then that was it. Goes like, well, I'll see what this is about. And then so that was the pathway, that was the pivot. That's when I went to grad school and said, I know I want to do forensic, that's for me. And I know I want to work with criminals on some type of level or just a struggling mental health population. So that's what really helped me. And when and I don't know if anybody has told you all this, when you go to college, pick things that you like and pick things that are different because you never know how it will help you. I made sure every semester I picked at least one class that had nothing to do with my major because I never knew how it could help me in life. And I thought that was a big benefit. And if you get to college and you don't know what you want to major in, that's okay too. You know, there's so much pressure to know, but you really don't know. You really don't know until you get your foot out there, you start talking and mingling and getting to know people and getting to know different things.
I'm so glad you said that. We heard that message in February from some of the panelists, which is it's okay to not know. It's okay to. It's especially important to embrace the fact that you might not know, and there's a lot of pressure to around you to that would make you feel like you need to commit or know something absolutely, and keeping an open mind is just really invaluable throughout all of life. Awesome. Well, panelists, we are so grateful for you to give your time and your expertise today. We can't thank you enough. It's been really cool to hear your perspectives on the profession and the world and how to take care of yourself. And so, thanks so much for joining us. We really are grateful.
My pleasure.
So it's Friday, so I'm going to wish everybody a lovely weekend. Y'all have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks. You too.
Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
And folks, that was our 2 minutes of circling around the living room or whatever setting you all might find yourselves in right now. Welcome back. We are pleased to be joined in an emergency medicine panel. So I'm not sure who in this gathered group has ever ridden in the back of an ambulance as a patient, but I'll share that I have. And I'll say that from personal experience, the moments surrounding that medical emergency that I found myself in were some of the scariest in my life. And thankfully, in the grand scheme of things, my situation was not nearly as bad as many others who ride in a paramedic's mobile office, the ambulance. Taking it a couple steps further, the work that's undertaken in the emergency department more times than not is underscored by the loud ticking of a clock that could be life or death for the individual who's just arrived. So you'll find that the term emergency medicine is oftentimes used to talk specifically about physicians, medical doctors, but I believe that to be not completely accurate. And there's a whole army of medical professionals involved in emergency medicine. And we are fortunate to be joined by some today. And so today we're joined by three wonderful professionals. We have Taylor Dittmer. She works in the emergency department at Carthage Memorial Hospital in Carthage, Illinois. We've got Stacy Dubé. She's a paramedic with the Fulton County Emergency Medical Association, which is located in Canton, Illinois. And we are also honored to be joined by Katie Morrison, who is a respiratory therapist at McDonough District Hospital, which is located in Macomb, Illinois. And before we take another step further, I just want to say that although this segment is entitled Emergency Medicine, there's going to be some discussion that we can have with Ms. Morrison, the respiratory therapist, because that work goes far beyond just perhaps the emergency department. But we kind of had to I wanted to cover respiratory therapy, and so we put you in with this group, Ms. Morrison. So Ms. Dittmer, Ms. Dubé, and Ms. Morrison, it is so good to have you here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us. So just to give a little roadmap here, I was kind of talking with Ms. Dubé about a virtual workplace tour that we produced, which you're about to see. So stay tuned there. And I think that what we're going to do here today is we're going to think about it like this. The emergency happens. It typically does not happen in the medical incident doesn't happen in a medical facility. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of trace the incident from where it happens, out at someone's house or out at the ball field, wherever it is out in the world. And we're going to make our way towards where layers of treatment and response can happen increased. So we're going to travel through the field office of a paramedic into the hospital and kind of explore it that way. So what I would like to do right now is share with you all a quick virtual workplace tour. And this is the tour of Fulton County Emergency Medical Association's ambulance and the work that they do out there. So give me just a moment while I get this queued up, and we'll take a virtual workplace tour. Give me just a minute. And perfect. Give everyone a heads up. Ms. Dubé is actually going to take us through this tour herself.
Hi, my name is John. I'm a paramedic supervisor here with Fulton County Emergency Medical Association. We're the paramedic ambulance service contracted by the County of Fulton to provide ALS service to the county. Today we'll be demonstrating a mock cardiac arrest.
Stacy, take it away for us, please.
Okay, so this is what it looks like in the back of our truck. These guys were not exactly willing to perform on camera, but a little pizza helped with this. So this is Josh and Kenny. They're both paramedics here with us, have been for several years. And we put our mannequin in the back there to kind of give a little bit of a visual aid to see, it's like, where does the patient go? How do we work back there? This is very much our office. This is where we're most comfortable and where we have absolutely every piece of equipment that we could need is kind of like at our fingertips. Things are spaced in the back of these ambulances so that way they can be reached with very minimal movement, but also a lot of safety considerations there as well. You can see behind the gentleman there on the left, the dark hair, safety restraint system. It looks a little bit different than the seat belts you have in your vehicles, just because we need to be able to be strapped in and be able to move around and take care of the patient in front of us. So what you're going to see here is kind of like a mock cardiac arrest. It didn't go as well as we wanted to, just because I think every time we tried to start this, there was another call that was paged out. So this was kind of a very fast show and tell kind of thing, but we'll show you what goes on here.
Yeah,
so this is our patient.
I can confirm. I think there were 3 calls that happened like within moments of getting started filming the video every time. So it was a testament to just how busy this kind of work environment is.
Yeah. You'll see a change of crew members as well. It's just because there's a lot of people in and out of the calls. So this patient here, we've found him to be in cardiac arrest. We'll see our monitor there on the side. It's a life pack. It has the ability to
sir, you're unresponsive now.
defibrillate and cardiovert, also take blood pressures, and just read an actual EKG just like you would have in the hospital there. So there's Kenny, he's doing CPR. We'll do CPR on patients for a little bit, just ourselves, but we also have a Lucas device, and you can see me there in the background. We're putting a plate underneath this patient's chest so we can attach our Lucas. You've probably heard and maybe even seen a Lucas before, just because of how it's been marketed. It is very much worth its weight in gold. That device right there is amazing. It does perfect CPR all the time. It takes just a couple seconds to actually put on the patient, and it's working. It's doing CPR. So we can intubate that patient. We can start IVs, we give medications, and like I said, move the patient from like a home or out in the open area to our ambulance without having any interruptions with CPR, which is perfect. That's how the best, that's the best thing for us.
And
here, Josh is getting ready to put in an airway. Obviously, this patient can't control his own airway, so we're going to do that for him. He's using a King tube right now. So you see him, he's going to test the tube, make sure it's the cuff inflates on it perfectly like it should. And it does. He's going to place that in. It's a very simple procedure that we do. Just requires a little bit of lubrication. You can see him putting that on there now, and it just slides into place. It's not very invasive at all, and is a good quick airway. This will only take us about 5 or 6 seconds to be able to place. We'll inflate the balloons here, which is what you're going to see him do now. And it takes about 60 cc's of air to be able to do that. It seems like a lot, but there's actually 2 bulbs that it is inflating there. So it's not really too much. We are attaching our bag, and we start bagging him.
What are those? What does the inflated bulb do?
So what those bulbs do is once they're inflated, it is going to, that tube, when it goes down in there, it goes into the esophagus, and it will inflate and will close off the esophagus. So that way the patient's stomach contents cannot get up past that bulb. So it's going to be there to help protect his airway. And that way we can, breathe for that patient. You see there, we've got some patches on him. Those are like, I think the best way to describe them is like a mousetrap, like a sticky mousetrap. They're that sticky for good reason, because they need to have good skin contact. So if this patient will need to be shocked or defibrillated, we can do that through those pads right there. Kenny is starting an IV. So that is in right there. All of this stuff, when we are all 3 working together, only takes about 2 or 3 minutes.
Has it been 3 to 5 minutes?
Yes, it has.
Time to administer
So
another.
Josh
Take
is
notes of-
being a little bit extra
Time is
here, but so
12:06.
we're given some
Have you stopped for a pulse
medications.
check?
Rhythm check.
Once
Still
we
Sicily?
do that, we have
Okay,
time for a rhythm
continue
check.
CPR.
If there is any type of rhythm at that point, we can check feel for a pulse. If not, we're going to continue CPR and start giving more medications. Our medications are timed so that way they're being delivered at a constant stream basically for that patient. A lot of different medications depending on what the patient has going on, but that's basically what happens in the back of that. The only thing that we were not able to simulate is going down the road with this. So you'll see there's a bar that runs the length of the ambulance right above Josh's head. That's something that we hold on to a lot if we do have to stand up and get out of our safety restraint systems there.
You can kind of tell by the way that Josh has his hand in his pocket that maybe he's not having to brace for bumps in the road.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Dubé, for taking us on that
You're
little
welcome.
tour and for setting all of that up, especially on a busy Friday when we were trying to actually produce the video.
And I don't mean to distract from that really quickly, but we did have a question specific to what was happening in the video. So
Okay.
I did want to just invite that question to happen right now.
Great.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
I'm Christina. I'm from East St. Louis Senior High School, and I was looking at the video, and I was wondering, is it hard to get the tube down his throat without causing out any damage? Like, is it hard? I just want to ask. I see it on Grey's Anatomy. So.
Oh yeah. So with this type of tube that we're using, damage is. It is always a possibility, just because people's anatomy can be a little bit different, but it is not traumatic. Everything in there is plastic and very smooth edged material, so it is not something that you could, if you're using it inappropriately, I think you could cause some damage, but there's not been any damage that I've known from this patient. However, is it difficult sometimes? Yes. That tube is actually designed for rescue personnel to be able to use. What we like to do as paramedics, if there is not an airway in place, we like to intubate them using an endotracheal tube, which is a tube that looks just like that, but it's a lot thinner. And we use, that little, it looks like it's called a blade, but it's actually very dull. It's not sharp. Something that we introduce into the mouth, lift up, and then put the tube down into, their lungs basically, to where we can ventilate that. And there's a bulb on the end of that will inflate, and we can seal off their airway. So that way, when we ventilate that patient, that it is protected, that there's not any stomach contents or anything that can get in there. But yeah, good question.
And how
I'd
is it
also
that
like-
you decide what kind of tube to use?
Well, if that is not, the endotracheal tube is not something that rescue can place. So if rescue happens to be on scene, they will use an airway device that they are approved for using. The big thing right now is an iGel, and they work really well. So I would say probably a good 50 or 60% of our patients have iGels in place once we get there.
And I would also like to open this up to Ms. Morrison because, I would love to hear your comments about this.
Well, so at the hospital I work at, respiratory therapists, we do intubate, and we always use endotracheal tubes. So endotracheal tubes, you have the larynge scope. It looks like this. You introduce it, you lift up, and you can, the vocal cords open up, and that's where you place the tube. Myself, I don't know how I could do that in the back of the ambulance, so I totally give props. And
Yeah,
that rocky
right.
ambulance.
Jostling around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the preferred airway. It's something that I can hook my ventilator up to safely. It's just total control of the airway. So then we don't have to worry about the stomach contents and all that. So.
Mm-hmm.
when they get to the hospital, if they do have any form of other airway in, like an LMA or anything else, like a king or any of that, they'll take that out and we'll put the endotracheal tube in.
You'll replace that? The ET?
Yep.
ET for short?
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. Great. Thanks for sharing. Okay. So the awesome people at Fulton County have transported, and let's just say they magically transported all the way over to Hancock County. And so a patient is now arriving at Carthage Memorial, where you are, Ms. Dittmer. And I guess perhaps maybe just connect these two. So they've pulled up. It's a cardiac arrest. And so what happens when you all receive at the ED at Carthage?
So I'm thrilled that there's an airway and an IV already in place.
Hey,
They did their job.
Dubé. Yeah,
yes, absolutely. In the back of the ambulance.
Rig,
I'll
sure.
take anything I can get.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, we kind of take over. Typically our EMS and will kind of hang around with us and help out if they can. Sometimes they need a bit of a break depending on how long they've been working on this person themselves. They give us report as to, was this witnessed? Was it unwitnessed? Do we know how long they've been down for or unresponsive without a pulse for? And then we kind of take over as far as medication. We have an ER provider 24/7, whether it's a mid-level physician's assistant or a doctor. So our doctor typically, calls the shots on this code from there. And then with our team, we take over airway management and giving the medications that are needed and trying to stabilize at that point.
Mm-hmm. And then also, if it's possible, gather more information.
Yes.
Yeah. And are you directly involved? Well, you're probably directly involved in all of this, but in terms of interfacing with the patient as they arrive,
yes.
And okay, and so here's one that I think I wanted to bring up, and I don't actually have to point it at anyone, so anyone can take this, but I'm talking about the importance of gathering information and providing comfort, and how those two things have to collide kind of in a delicate but very important fashion. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Ms. Dittmer, do you want to take first go at this?
Yeah. So as far as gathering information and providing comfort, we do rely on if there were any family members, there that can give us kind of their background as to what happened, or any medical history that this person may have, as well as, we try to utilize our social services, if we can, to sit with the family members and kind of explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. In the best way possible, because it's a super overwhelming situation for any family member, and most time it's pretty unexpected and obviously upsetting. So we try to explain to them as best we can, because it can look, it's traumatic and it can look pretty scary. So we rely heavily on our social service people to kind of bridge that together
with the family members.
With the family. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Either two of you follow up?
I just know a lot of our cardiac arrests, it depends. There's a lot that goes on. We may or may not transport that patient. So if we don't transport that patient, we have a lot more hands-on with the family, just because they're scared. They're trying to figure out what just happened. There's calling other family members to be there with them. And, just providing condolences, for them. Sometimes, and you just kind of have to take it, I think, each situation, just because sometimes the family member will want to be right there with that person. They may want to just leave the room and not acknowledge it at all. It just kind of depends how that family member is. But if we do transport, we are very much relieved to get to the hospital and, pass that on, just because it is hard. I don't think it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this, it is still really hard to see, like when we were talking, a woman that has lost her husband after being married to him for 60 years. There's no amount of I'm sorry, I think makes that situation better. But I think that, the hospital staff does an amazing job with this part. And that's something that we try to, mimic and deliver, in the field as well.
Great. Thanks for that. And actually, this is a good launch point for to discuss that so there's a lot of like the ideas of that the emergency department and these situations, it's exciting, and there's a really fast pace in emergency medicine, and so I'm wondering, I'd like to hear you all's advice to any of the folks out there that have joined us today that might be interested in any of your fields or emergency medicine in general. Like, what about the toll and how to reflect back to our mental wellness segment? Like, how do you keep yourself in a good, healthy spot so that you can provide good services and be there present to make those rapid decisions? And so how do you, first of all, the toll it could take, and how do you take good care of yourself? And I can either point that at someone or let you all run with it.
As far as the toll it takes, it's dependent on the day or week or month. Sometimes, we don't have anything. We have wins repeatedly for X amount of time. And then sometimes we have a lot of loss. And so it just kind of depends. And that's when you kind of lean on each other. After any big event, like a code or anything like that, we do a debriefing. And where everybody who was involved, we kind of just sit down and we talk about, okay, what went well? What can we work on? How can we better ourselves for the next time this could happen? And I know at my facility, we make counseling available for people who are in these events, especially, all of us, I think, work in pretty rural areas. So it's sometimes your neighbor, your friend, your cousin's boyfriend, it can take a big toll.
The degree of separation might not be as big.
Right.
There might be actually some familiarity there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Ms. Morrison, I wanted to ask you about the pandemic and the demands it's put on respiratory therapists and people in your field is pretty massive. And I guess I wanted to do two things, which is get your reflections on what this past year has been like in the life of a respiratory therapist, and also to get your kind of comments about ways that you feel it's valuable to take care of yourself in a very intense, what I can only imagine has been a very intense past year.
So I think it's been, yes, this year's been taxing, but I think it has been for anybody in the medical field right now. But the best thing is a good team. Like, when you come in and you have everybody is on the same level, it makes for smooth and easy. When you know people, you have the steps. So it's just good to always have a good team, and that helps a lot with the mental toll as well.
Yeah.
A bunch of people that can put their heads together. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, because team approaches is a theme that we've been threading through all of the events. And I've been trying to, or I shouldn't say I, but we, the team who's produced this, has really been trying to put that in the front, that it really takes a crew to give good person-centered care. And what you're saying is also that crew can be what really helps to sustain your well-being as folks that are working really hard, and sometimes the outcomes can be really challenging. I did a poor job of keeping my eye on the clock here, y'all. And what started, what feels like moments ago, is kind of nearing the 2:30 mark. And I wanted to make sure that if there's questions amongst the learner audience here, that we can get to them. So if anyone here has any questions, shout out for the ones that have already come in, and would love to hear from you. So I'll open up the floor to any questions right now. Okay. So the really dynamic and exciting world of emergency medicine. Really grateful that you've joined us. The team is really appreciative that you gave up some Friday afternoon to come join the folks that are here and to join us. Your perspectives are really, really valued and appreciated. And so thanks again for joining us here today, and wishing y'all a wonderful weekend. If you have a weekend, I don't know how that works in the emergency world, but wishing you the best. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. And so everybody, this is a good time for me to thank everyone who's joined us today, because it's not just the health professionals that have given up their Friday afternoons. Same kind of thanks, similar flavor of thanks goes out to you all from wherever you've joined us for tuning in to our virtual event today. Do keep in mind that we have one more coming up, and that'll be on, let me get this right in my